Hey, how's everybody doing today? So, I have a pretty comical topic to talk about. I'm gonna try to keep this as brief as possible. I'm gonna try not to ramble, but someone had made a comment. I left a comment on the in the comment section of one of my most recent postings, uh, stating that they had reported me for paper terrorism. They reported it to the authorities, quote unquote. Uh, I mean, whoever the authorities are is probably just mommy and daddy. Mom being picked on. They don't like the taste of their own medicine. Um, excuse me. So I'm not sure who it was exactly. The particular comment disappeared pretty quick. I don't know if YouTube deleted it or if they did or where it went. But so the the definition of paper terrorism. Let me just read you this real quick. This is from Wikipedia. It's a common, excuse me, it's a common definition found in most places, but I'm just going to read it from Wikipedia because it's right here at the top. So, paper terrorism, according to Wikipedia, is a neologism to refer to the use of false liens, frivolous lawsuits, bogus letters of credit, and other legal documents lacking sound factual basis as a method of harassment. Now, before I get into some of these words that describe paper terrorism, just on the face of it, what these people are saying is false. Like by reporting that I'm performing paper terrorism is it's a false report because of the fact that the documents that I have created, that I am creating more documents off of, these original contracts that I sent out, registered mail, certified mail, return receipts. So I got the signature cards back. Gave the respondents plenty of time, more than ample time, to respond to rebutting the affidavits or the information, or to rebut the claims, or any of that. I gave them multiple opportunities. Myself, I filed the administrative action in the county court as well as in municipal court to give them a just another opportunity to go on the record publicly after they had already defaulted privately. Um, and technically, it wasn't privately because I was forced into the public by these people through their actions. And so, technically, even though I was attempting to act as a private man, I was being forced to operate in the public realm, if that makes sense, if you follow what I'm saying. Um, so, all of these documents that I had sent out, certified mail, return receipt, with the signature card that I got back, all of these documents went out to these public officials. So I was creating contracts with these public officials, with these particular organizations that they're in charge of, or whatever their particular position is, um, outlining the malfeasance in office, the law violations, rights violations, and other violations that I outlined, not only in the documents themselves, but in the fee and fine schedule that I sent along with the documents, to put them all on notice that this is what they would be held liable for should they violate any one of these. At the time, I had written 30, and I'm going to keep it at that amount. I'm not going to add anything more to it. 30 is enough. 30 different violations that I outlined. That if you go back in my postings a couple months ago, I did a video where I showed that particular document, the fee and fine schedule. I went through it, read it, and showed the document for you all to see how I structured it. And that was one of the documents that I had sent in with the certified mailings, the return receipt mailings, and as well as I filed in the courts when they dragged me through these ridiculous color of law actions. And so I filed copies of these contracts and documents in the particular matters to put the respective individuals at the particular times on notice that if they did any further actions to violate those particular rights or violations that I outlined in the fee and fine schedule or the other documents, that they would be further liable for those violations as well, and the amounts that are outlined for the violations, the fees and the fines. So not a single one of them bothered to address appropriately any of the documents, specifically the affidavits, because I outlined in there specifically that for them to rebut the affidavit, they needed to respond with their own affidavit, point for point, rebutting my affidavit with facts that would potentially controvert my facts, should there be any, and there wasn't, because I was speaking from truth, and I was dictating or writing that, documenting that based on the truth. And so they didn't bother to respond, so they were defaulted in those original documents. So those were now contracts by their tacit agreement, their silence, acquiescence by silence. They gave their tacit approval or tacit agreement to the terms. In fact, now I've given them over a year, and all that they have done is come up with more color of law actions, more further violations of what I outlined in those original documents. And so, with all that being said, this preponderous, is that the right word? I don't know if that sounds right. Anyways, this dumb claim of paper terrorism, it's more it's par for the course. This is their MO. It's mostly, it seems, projection, where they're projecting on me what they are doing. Excuse me. The trying to claim paper terrorism. I mean, technically, that's what they did to me, because corporate entities, corporate fictions, corporations, they don't have lawful standing against the living man. They only have standing in a legal aspect or administrative aspect against the corporate fiction known as the all capital letter name that is spelled similar to mine, with no punctuations and doesn't have the beneficiary on the end of it, because it's a corporate entity. It's a non-living entity used for commerce. And so these people, acting as trustees in their individual capacities, they were abusing me as the beneficiary, forcing by way of torture and terrorizing and terrorism, threatening my life and property, stealing my property. They forced me into compliance, and they forced my acceptance. They made it very clear that if I would not have, they would have just thrown me back in the cage and left me there until I did. And that was after, let's see, I think at that point it might have been around 30 days total, not consecutive, but 30 days total being caged, just for asking these people to do their jobs. So, with that being said, any documents that I create from this point forward, and any documents that I have created that may lead to any types of liens being filed, first of all, they're not false liens, because that's probably the one point of the definition of paper terrorism that these idiots are hanging on, that they think that these liens are false. Well, they're not false, because they are in lieu of the contracts that were created and agreed upon, that I had sent out, registered mail, certified mail, return receipt. to the principals of these organizations, as well as some of the supervisors and executives in the departments and organizations or the corporations, and they agreed to them. Then, when these actions were done against me, when these specifically these four people, they let's see, Kaylee Hambrick, Stephanie Lynn Sheets, uh, is it Kim Brown, Kim Sue Brown, or Kim Brown, I think is what she goes by, and then David Tarbert. And possibly Emily Tarbert too. I'm not sure if she was involved in this most recent action, but I know David Tarbert was, because he was one of the witnesses that testified that I got to cross-examine. And so, specifically, these four people or individuals, because in their capacity at the time, they were speaking on behalf of their employee, so they were the person at the time. They admitted in their testimony, when I cross-examined them, they admitted that they were acting on their own behalf. Nobody told them what to do. They weren't following orders. No one told them what to think or what to tell me. They had made up their own mind, essentially. I can't remember the exact words verbatim, but they acted on their own volition. So, at that point, when they admitted that they acted on their own volition, they weren't following orders. They weren't going by what their manager or supervisor was telling them to do or to say. They acted outside the bounds of the department or the organization that they work for, and so they were acting rogue, and they don't fall under the category of qualified immunity or anything of that nonsense or nature. Excuse me. Because of the fact that they admitted that they were acting on their own free will, or they made up their own minds, and they weren't doing what their supervisors told them to do. Now, they did that not only when they told me that it was the county's responsibility, which was a false statement and fraud, because that's a lie. It wasn't. It's their responsibility to address the situation according to the state codes and the municipal codes. As well as they failed to even bother looking at the state codes. I don't even know if they looked at the municipal codes, but I know for a fact that they didn't bother looking at the state codes, because I asked them specifically, all four of them, if they were aware of Ohio Revised Code 715.49, 715.49, sections A and B, and I read it to them, what the particular code states, and it states in that particular code, in it's either section A or B, that it's the municipal corporation's responsibility to address noise and disturbance issues, and it even goes on to say that even if the source of the noise or disturbance is outside of the city limits, or I can't remember the exact verbiage, it's still the municipal corporation's responsibility. And so they were violating that particular code, because that code authorized them to not only take my complaints, but to pass them up the chain of command to more than likely the law director, David Tarbert, whom falsely testified, what's the term, bared false witness against me. Excuse me. And but so the reports never got passed up, and these people refused to do their job, and they ignored the codes that tell them what they're supposed to do. So not only did they act on their own, but they ignored the codes, the regulations, and policies that tell them what to do and how they should have reacted, or acted rather, not reacted, but how they should have acted. and maybe not directly, but they should be able to ascertain that if it states in the Ohio Revised Code that it is a municipal corporation's responsibility, that they should be able to figure out that it's their responsibility to therefore take the complaints and not play games on the phone and not manipulate the conversation or manipulate the situation to their advantage, so that way they could try to put forth a false claim of harassment. Simply because they didn't want to do their job, they didn't want to take the complaints, they were tired of hearing it, they don't like me, or whatever the ridiculous excuse is. I don't care. It's more than enough proof and evidence of their incompetence, and that's what I've been talking about this whole time. You know, if these people didn't act so incompetent, I wouldn't refer to them as being incompetent. If they would consider their actions and govern themselves appropriately, then maybe I wouldn't characterize their actions as incompetent. But anyways, kind of getting off topic. So, paper terrorism. This this ridiculous report of paper terrorism. So, for whomever made the complaint, if it's even real, because I said to the authorities, I don't even know who that was. They didn't bother stating who the so-called authorities were. Probably just mommy and daddy. But so I wanted to break down real quick, because more than likely this is what they're the one like facet of that definition of paper terrorism that they're holding on to. Excuse me, because I mentioned the word lien before. And there's a potential that the liens may be created, or may be being created as we speak. I don't know if I said that right. But if that's the case, they wouldn't be non-factual. They would be factual because they're based off of these documents and contracts that have been created and have been agreed to by people like Donald Mason, Tony Corey, Doug Murray, what's his name? Andrew Joseph, Andrew Joseph, the son, the one that's in there now, that ironically took the same position as his father. Yeah, no nepotism there, huh? So, anyways, as I digress, the one term in there that they're hanging on, I'm sure, is false lien, because I used the word lien before, and so I wanted to define that. So false lien, and again, this is Wikipedia, consider your source, but this is the typical definition that I find in most places. So I just take it from Wikipedia because it's at the top of the screen. So. A false lien is a document that purports to describe a lien, but which has no legal basis, or which is based upon false, fictitious, or fraudulent statements or representations. So, the one aspect of the paper terrorism definition that they're holding or hanging on is the false lien portion. But when you look into that, dig a little bit further into what false lien means, I just gave you the definition. This proves that they're making false reports, because the claims that I've made, the documents that I've created, and the documents that I am creating and will create are all in lieu of the original contracts that were sent out via mail, registered mail, certified mail, return receipt. So I got the signature cards back, proving the acceptance of the documents, the contracts. Gave more than ample time, actually multiple times over the time frame allotted to respond to the documents, to the affidavits, and to the claims. No one, not a single one of them bothered to respond. So every one of them defaulted. And this was before these four individuals decided to get up on the stand under oath and testify to their incompetence. And so everyone that was involved in that whole situation, from the municipal corporation level, even up to the county court level, and even the state level. Uh, Prosecutors acting on behalf of the state of Ohio have implicated the state of Ohio. And so now people like the governor is being involved because of the fact that he's the principal of the corporation of the state of Ohio. So, for representatives or agents of that corporation to act on its behalf in a fraudulent manner puts the corporation, and therefore him as the principal, at liability. So, or gives them liability, or makes them liable, however you say it. Excuse me. So, the concept of false lien doesn't even pertain or doesn't even fit the situation because of the fact that whatever liens are created, first of all, I'm not creating any liens. So if that's what they're referring to, it further goes to show how they're making false reports, because I'm not creating any liens. I'm simply creating the documents in the contracts that I'm forwarding to a trustee, for a trustee whom, if they decide is necessary for the collection, to create the liens. I'm not creating, so that's a false statement. I'm not creating any liens. For them to state that I'm creating false liens or I'm performing paper terrorism is a false statement. Because, number one, it's all based on their actions that are not only recorded in my documents, but recorded in the very the court proceedings at the municipal corporation level, as well as the county court, the Court of Common Pleas for Muskingum County. So that shows that there's a relationship there. It proves, because of the tacit agreement, the acquiescence by silence, and the agreeing to the original contracts. Let's see, I think over a year ago is when I originally sent those out. When they agreed to those contracts, any violations that were performed after that agreement was made were further violations and further breaches of contract and further breaches of trust. And so any and all of these documents that I have created and am creating and will be creating is all in lieu of those original contracts and the actions that these particular individuals performed that were fraudulent in nature, that they provided false witness against me, testified to their own incompetence and their own willingness to ignore their own policies and regulations and boundaries in a way to drag me through a collar of law action to harass and intimidate, terrorize me, threaten my life, threaten my property, steal my property, attempt to disrupt my life altogether and destroy it altogether, even though it didn't work very well. I'm telling you, it's something else. I sometimes feel like I'm in a Twilight Zone episode dealing with these people, because they're just so out of touch with reality. And if any of you, especially for those in the comment section that doubt what I'm saying, or that want to call me crazy or a lunatic or a sovereign citizen or whatever the stupid phrases you want to use, why don't you look up what I'm talking about first? You might learn something, first of all, and second of all, you might not put some dumb comment on my posting, because you'll realize that you're the one that doesn't know what the hell you're talking about. So yeah, I don't want to go down that path, jump off into that soapbox, but yeah, on the face of it, this whole idea, if it's even valid, if they even seriously reported this paper terrorism, for the ones, if you're listening, that reported it, be aware that there may be consequences for making false reports, and for the ones that it was reported to, if you're listening, keep in mind and consider that the individuals or people, whomever, may have made the complaints, if they're even real. They're making false reports. And so I'm sure whichever level the so-called authorities are at, there's repercussions for making false reports. And so you might take that into consideration, and you might consider charging these people for making those false reports, because the claim of paper terrorism is completely false in this situation, in this context, because any documents created, whether they're liens or any of the stipulations in the definition of paper terrorism, if any of those categories or stipulations, or however you want to characterize it, if any of those, how should I say it? Well, they're not valid, because it's all based on like fictitious, fraudulent documents that it said doesn't have any legal, what was the phrase, legal status. I can't remember the exact wording off the top of my head. Legal basis is what it said. Every document that I'm creating and have created has not only legal basis but lawful basis, and it's all again based on those original contracts that were agreed to by the principals and the supervisors in these particular organizations, and what these people did, specifically the four so-called witnesses, the false witnesses that testified against me and provided false witness information and fraudulent information on the stand under oath, and as well as everyone else who was involved, prosecutors, all the court personnel, all the public servants from municipal level, every one of them, so-called police officers, law enforcement officers, deputies, everyone involved was a part of that whole process. All of them are liable. So again, just to reiterate real quick, the the idea of paper terrorism doesn't apply here. In fact, if you think about it, if you really think about it, it's more like it's what these people were actually doing. Paper terrorism. That's what they were doing to me by creating these false documents in the courts and forcing me to accept this corporate non-living identity, this dead identity, so that way they could drag me through this whole process and create bonds and profit off of it. That's what they did to me. So actually, this is just another example of their own delusions. They gaslight, or they project their own actions onto me. Just like if you go back to on this YouTube channel, you go back to the very first postings The first two postings back in December, I think it was December 14th of 2018, when they came to this property and threatened my life and threatened my property and tried to kick in my door and um, induced panic on me, and that's what they attempted to charge me with, or whatever the terminology is. I don't want to get into all that, but anyways, it's just this is another example of them projecting what they are doing onto me. They induced panic on me, and then tried to say that I was inducing panic on somebody else that doesn't even, you know, couldn't even show up to the hearing. Um, and then, like in this situation, claiming that I'm performing paper terrorism. This is what they did. This is what they did by creating all these fraudulent documents, false affidavits, saying that I did this and I did that, and then admitting in their testimony that not only did I not hurt anybody, nobody was hurt as a result of my phone calls. It was more of just an inconvenience for them. And not only that, they, I think I already said it, they acted on their own. No one told them what to do. They weren't following orders. No one told them what to say, or no one told them to tell me that it was the county's responsibility to address the noise issue, which was a false statement and fraud, because it was their responsibility to not only take my complaint, but it was the municipal corporation's responsibility, whomever is designated, whether it's the law director, public safety director, the mayor. I don't care if it's a garbage man. I don't give a shit who it is. Someone should have been designated to address this situation, probably the law director, in the courts. And to just, all they really have to do is send a letter to the particular business operators or the principals of the particular companies or corporations, excuse me, and ask them to comply with the disturbance of the peace code and that sort of thing, and to not create a bunch of noise at night. It would have been as simple as that. But the problem is there's a lot of nepotism. And back when this all first started up in 2018 and into 2019, let's see, it was before Donald Mason took the position as the CEO of the municipal corporation. It was when, what is that? What is his name? Oh, it slipped my mind. I can't remember. I had it. I forgot it. Whoever the last quote unquote mayor was. I can picture his face. I can't remember his name. Anyways, I found out at the time, when I was still investigating this whole thing, trying to figure out where the sources of noise were coming from. Once I tracked one of the sources to Casting Solutions, or Burnham Foundry, is what it used to be called. I think the parent company is Burnham. If I remember correctly, I might be wrong, a little bit off on that. But anyways, the former mayor, former CEO of the municipal corporation, used to work at Casting Solutions. So when I found this out, I thought to myself, well, clearly it's nepotism, because he's protecting his former employer. I'm not 100% sure how high up he got in the ranks of that organization before he retired or left the organization, whichever. I'm not sure if he retired or not, or quit or got fired. I don't know the details of that. But if I remember correctly, he worked there for a number of years. So it wasn't like he just worked there for a short period of time. He worked there for, it was like 40 years or something like that. So he had a well-established relationship with that particular company and corporation. And at the time, when he was still in office as the CEO of the municipal corporation, when I was trying to address the noise issues, he was one of the ones that was running interference and causing some of the problems to begin with. And so it was clear to me at the time that he was protecting his former employer. It was clearly nepotism. And I wasn't sure. I was trying to find out if he was collecting a pension from his employment there, or if there was any still any financial ties from him between him and that company from his working there for so long, which would be a conflict of interest. But that never was appropriately addressed, and then Donald Mason came along and took over. And maybe at some point I'll show you some more of the emails from the correspondence back and forth between Donald Mason and I back before in 2019, before he took office, and even after. And I have one from September 11th of 2019, if I remember correctly, where I was informing him about Ohio Revised Code 715.49, sections A and B, and the other municipal codes that applied, and attempting to address this matter, because I found out that more than likely at the time he was going to become the mayor, quote unquote, and I had found out with his background not only of being in the area, but also working for like different energy boards and the Public Utility Commission of Ohio and other organizations, that he might have some ability to reach out to other people that I don't have access to attempt to get these problems, these situations fixed. Because after all, someone with that type of experience in history, they should have the ability to make things happen. They should have the ability, they should know whom exactly to reach out to, whom exactly is responsible, and whom should actually do something about it. Excuse me. And in fact, he did. I mean, he was one of the first ones, Donald Mason was one of the first ones that admitted that it was the municipal corporation's responsibility to address the noise. That was prior to him taking office and actually working for the city. Then, ironically, after he officially became employed by the city again, and took that position, he changed his tune, and all of a sudden it was, we need to start from scratch and blah, 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 and it was just all excuses. Just typical politician bullshit. Promise you the world to get you to, vote, even though I don't do any of that nonsense because it's bullshit. He's just a typical politician. Doing what he has to suck up to dupe people into thinking he's going to do the right thing. But then once he gets into office, he may, I don't know. I mean, overall, he may be doing a better job than others in the past, in most recent times. But I mean, I don't know. I don't really care about all of that so much, because he has failed so miserably in this situation that I've been dealing with, that he has a responsibility to address. Not only as the CEO of the corporation, the municipal corporation, but also because of our contractual agreements, our verbal agreements, because of our meeting of the minds the whole time, which I have evidence of in emails and some recorded conversations, phone call conversations. I'm kind of rambling here, but just to bring it back all the way back around. Any of these documents that are being created, that have been created, should they lead to a lien being created against these people for their actions, there's nothing false or fictitious about it. It's based on their actions. These are repercussions for their actions that were outlined in the original documents and contracts that I sent out to the principals of these organizations and corporations that were agreed to and they should have been made fully aware, because not only did I send the copies, certified mail return receipt, to the principals, but I filed copies of these documents in the very matters that were in the court regarding these people. And the prosecutor received a copy as well. And so that information should have been shared with these people. They should have been made aware that if they continued to commit fraud and provide false witness and false information and more false reports, and to continue to harass and intimidate and terrorize me, that these would be the repercussions. And this is just another one of those repercussions I had outlined in that original contract, is submitting the documents to a trustee for them to consider for collection. And if they see it fit, if they deem it necessary to create the lien, then that's what's going to happen. But that's not me making or creating the lien. I'm just providing the evidence and the documentation necessary for the trustee to do what they feel is necessary. So, again, to bring it all back around, this can't be what do they call it? Paper terrorism. There's no way, because the whole concept of paper terrorism is harassment by way of basically fraudulent documents, false documents. None of this is fraudulent or false. All of this is outlined in documents and affidavits that were unrebutted, that have not only been sent to most of these people directly, that they've failed and defaulted on themselves, but the principals of the organizations that they work for defaulted, and I have filed copies in the particular cases in the court that these people were involved with, and to notice them all at that particular point in time. And they continued to perform the fraud and perform the bearing of false witness against me, and performing this color of law action. And so this is just another, what's the word? Another ploy of theirs to get out from underneath the liability and repercussions of their actions. These people, specifically these 4 that I mentioned that testified against me, and then I got to cross-examine for them to admit their own incompetence. Those 4, the 3 dispatchers and the law director, in my opinion, I think that they seriously need a mental evaluation. But especially people like Michael T. Hughes, the prosecutor, who spoke on behalf of a fictitious entity, the state of Ohio, all capital letter, state of Ohio. So there is no one living being called the state of Ohio that can answer for anything or have any standing. So Michael T. Hughes spoke on behalf of a fictitious entity, an imaginary friend, made claims against me, the living man, and so by performing this fraud, because they didn't have jurisdiction over me, they might have had jurisdiction over the corporate name, the all capital letter name, or the actual trust. And if they had any actual standing, I mean, if there was any damages, then they could have recuperated that from the trust. But there was no damages. No one got hurt. The witnesses admitted that they didn't know what they were doing, and that they acted on their own, and that they were lying, basically. Because they didn't know that there's a Ohio Revised Code 715.49 in existence that told them that it was their responsibility. And on top of that, they admitted that they acted on their own. No one told them what to do or what to think. No one told them what to say or what to tell me. Um, so any liens that are potentially created or have been created out of these documents that I'm creating, they're not false. They're not fictitious. They have legal basis. They have legal standing. They have lawful standing. Because it's all based on their actions, and it's all based on what was outlined not only in the affidavits and documents that were submitted and filed also into the court matters, but also um, the the documents that I had sent out to the principals. So, with all that being said, I hope that you all pay attention. If you want to learn something, learn about it. Don't just take what other people say and run with it and think that that's truth, because that's hearsay. If you don't go and actually check for yourself, or have never actually checked for yourself, when you just believe what's being said on Facebook, or you believe what's being said even on YouTube, if you just believe what people say without actually validating anything, then, I mean, what good is that? It's not. It's the blind leading the blind. It does no good. It's going to constantly make people constantly fall into a ditch and fall into a ditch and fall, because the blind can't figure out where to go because they're blind. They can't see. So if you don't want to be blind, learn how to see. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I'm speaking philosophically here. If you don't know something, figure it out. Learn it. Educate yourself. Know it. Period. And then you will be set free, because you will know the truth. And not a damn thing anybody says will make a bit of difference, because you will know the truth. You've been set free, and nothing anybody says or does is going to affect you ultimately. It's as simple as that. And they can throw their temper tantrums. They can do what they want to do. They can try to get out from underneath the responsibility and the liability. But it's they've accepted it already. They've accepted it, and they don't even realize it. And they're gonna accept it. See, that's the funny thing. It's not like I'm just sending documents anywhere. Or it's not like I'm just creating random documents against random people that I've never had an interaction with before. That would be paper terrorism. Because that would be an attempt to harass somebody that I have no experience or relationship with whatsoever. That would be paper terrorism. Claiming that repercussions and liability for one's actions is paper terrorism is false reports, and really it's an admission of guilt. Because that's all they got, is to keep making these ridiculous claims, these ridiculous reports, like paper terrorism. Because they didn't even know it was their job to take the complaints in the first place. They thought that they had the ability to harass anybody that they didn't want to deal with on the phone. Well, they got another thing coming. Whether it's a lien, whether it's criminal charges, because there's still, I could still file in federal district court under Title 42, 1983 for deprivation of rights under color of law, and there's multiple other federal codes as well. Title 18, Section 241 and Section 242. Oh, so many. Second Amendment. There's quite a few. There's quite a few. In fact, if I really wanted to be a dick, all I had to do, or all I would have to do, is go out and attempt to go purchase a firearm, and when I'm rejected, I could use that as a further claim because it would be a further violation of the Second Amendment. Because any documentation or any information in a system that would say that I'm not allowed to purchase or possess or own a firearm is false and fraud on its face, because of the fact that it all stems from these fraudulent procedures and false claims that they're making, and the false testimony and false witness that they provided against me. And it would be a further violation of the Second Amendment, and I could go through that process, and I could create another claim against these people because they are further hindering my rights. So, I mean, if I really wanted to be petty, I could do that. I mean, hell, I could add a couple more fines to each of these claims for that if I wanted to do that. And trust me, I've considered it. But I don't want to be petty. I want to give them the opportunity to do the right thing. Maybe there's a possibility that if these people come clean and admit what they did was wrong, admit that they lied in open court on the record and lied under oath in their testimony, if that's the right way to characterize it, or just in general, if they just admit their wrongdoing, that could possibly make all this go away. Not for sure, but there's a possibility. But see, they're not even willing to do that. They don't care about the harm that they caused. They don't care about the damage and the destruction that they caused. They don't care about the stress and anxiety and pain and discomfort that they caused for me. They don't give a shit about that. That's how narcissistic these people are. Even after everything they've done, they're still going to dig in and make more false claims. It's amazing. It's amazing that these are the people that are supposed to be protecting the community in whatever capacity. It's a freaking joke. It's an absolute joke. They're causing more harm, at least for me. I can't speak for everybody. I can't speak for the whole community. But for me, they have caused way more harm than help. By a landslide, they've caused more harm than help. So, with that being said, if, let's just say hypothetically, they weren't here, there was no police department, I think I would actually be better off. Because then, I wouldn't have wasted my time with them or anybody else in the city, expecting them to do their job according to the law and according to the regulations and according to the codes that tell them how to do their job, tell them what their duty is, and the fact that they have a duty to act. So, this went a little bit longer than what I had originally wanted to, but it never ceases to amaze me how ridiculous these people are. And I am presuming a little bit that it was one of one of the ones involved that made the comment. The comment disappeared, so I can't see who put it up there. I don't know if they erased it or YouTube did or what, but yeah, more than likely it was one of them, and I'm presuming that, or a close friend or family member or something like that, someone who knows them, or coworker, something to that effect. More than likely, it was one of them. And this is just another example of them pulling bullshit out of the hat, trying to pull a magic trick, thinking that they're going to get away with it. This whole entire time, I don't even know if they realize. They should by now. But I've been keeping evidence of all of this malfeasance, all of the violations that they have performed. I've been keeping all of that documented, not just here on this YouTube channel with some of the recorded conversations and postings and interactions, but also in documents, documented proof in the courts, and in other documents, emails, and other correspondence. I've got all of this documented. I have their laundry list of violations of different types, which all put together are more than enough to be a major violation of the RICO Act, the Racketeering Influenced Corrupt Organizations Act. I don't know if they realize that. They should, because I've been very open about it. They have access to these recordings. I've put up some of the emails and correspondence and evidence that I've got. I've sent them copies of some of the evidence directly, saying, hey, look, this is what you all have done. This is what I have recorded. This is the evidence that I have. Basically asking them to fix it or to do better. And honestly, I think that's why they don't like me. They don't like me because I'm critical. Because I hold them to a higher standard. Because I don't just accept the half-assed, quota hire bullshit where they don't want to do their job and they play games on the phone and act like schoolyard bullies. That's why they don't like me, because I don't put up with that bullshit. I don't just cower down and do what I'm told like a good little slave. That's why they don't like me. When they tell me to jump, I flip them the bird. I don't do what they tell me to do. Period. It's as simple as that. They don't have the authority to tell me what to do. If they need me to do something for their convenience, then they can ask me. But they don't have the authority to tell me jack shit. So, with all that being said, I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but for those of you that made the reports, if you did, to whatever authorities, to mommy and daddy, you're making false reports. You're going to get in trouble for that. To the supposed authorities, whomever that is, whomever the mommy and daddy is that they complain to, if you're listening, then these people need to be held accountable for making false reports. And if you need to take some time to figure that out for yourself, then there's more than enough evidence that I have here posted on this YouTube channel, on these recordings and through recorded conversations and interactions and documentation that I've shown on some of these postings. But I've got more than enough proof in written documents, in court documents. Just a simple search at the municipal and also county court, the Court of Common Pleas in the county, you would see that there is a history. And if you want to dig further, you can see the actual documents that were filed. You can see the actual documents that were sent out, certified mail, return receipt, with the signature cards being returned for the acceptance. So, for all you listening, be careful that you're not making false reports. So I hope all you all keep your heads up, stay positive, and educate yourselves. Don't expect someone to tell you what to think, because you're only going to find yourself in a ditch, because someone along the way is going to mislead you. It's inevitable. If you know yourself, if you know who you are, if you know what you are, if you know where you came from, nobody can tell you anything. You won't be blown about by every wind of doctrine. You won't believe whatever bullshit is being spewed this week or today about this, that, or the other thing. You'll know what to think, and no one else can tell you otherwise. So I encourage you all, like I always say, I encourage you all to know the truth and let the truth set you free.